This is an inevitable consequence of 10 years of real terms cuts to university funding, Carole, when the tuition free, which was introduced in 2012 at 9,000, was frozen at that level effectively for a decade or more. And that has really compressed the value of university tuition fees, which made them look for alternative source of income from international students.
Now, many students will be anxiously awaiting the delivery of their A-level results this week, hoping to get the grades to get into university. But new research by the Sunday Times reveals that some elite universities are accepting more applicants with lower grades in an attempt to fill the gap left by an exodus of high-paying international students. Tighter visa rules, Brexit, economic instability and growing competition from universities abroad have left the UK's 55 universities with a total deficit of over £500 million. Vice-Chancellor of the University of East Anglia, David Maguire, speaking on Times Radio earlier, explained a further problem.
Having more impact right now is the changes in the Home Office's so-called basic compliance assessment, which is essentially the thresholds which they use to monitor the students which come into UK universities. And right across the whole university sector, this is having a big impact right now and will, if it's not mitigated, cause some further financial stress for a sector which is already suffering a number of pressures.
Well, joining me now is Lord Johnson, Joe Johnson, who was Minister for Universities from 2015 to 2019, now Executive Chairman of Future Learn. Hello, Joe.
Afternoon. Hi, Carole.
Good to have you with us. Are you concerned that some of our top universities are accepting pupils with lower grades than they would have done usually?
Well, this is an inevitable consequence of 10 years of real terms cuts to university funding, Carole, when the tuition free, which was introduced in 2012 at 9,000, was frozen at that level effectively for a decade or more. And that has really compressed the value of university tuition fees, which made them look for alternative source of income from international students, as your story in the Sunday Times highlighted today. And the effect of the fee cut, which it was in real terms, was not felt equally across the sector, because those high tariff universities, which include many in the Russell Group, were able to offset the loss of income by recruiting more domestic students. They effectively recruited students or admitted students who in previous years would have gone to other universities. And so the effect of the real terms cut in tuition fees has been felt unequally across the system, and universities that are less selective academically are the ones who've lost out and are now starting to feel more and more financial pressure.
And I want to talk a bit more about the financial pressures on universities in a moment. But I mean, first of all, what about students or would-be students? Is it a good thing that it now looks as though more students could have a chance of getting into our top universities? Or is it a problem if you've got people going into these institutions that do have very high standards and requirements of the pupils there, and maybe some young people who end up there who are going to really struggle to cope?
Yeah, clearly universities have to be very responsible with their admissions, and they are autonomous institutions. That's one of the great strengths of the English higher education system, is that institutions are autonomous, especially when it comes to setting admissions requirements. But they've got to do so responsibly, and none of them will want to be admitting students who aren't realistically going to benefit from the higher education that they offer and who aren't going to be able to access the learning in a meaningful way. So that's the quid pro quo for autonomy, is that it's got to be exercised responsibly. And they shouldn't be admitting students, if they are, who won't be able to benefit from the learning that's on offer.
What about the universities themselves? Because we know that foreign students pay a lot more, don't they, for their courses than those from the UK. Is this going to lead to a further shortfall? They're trying to make up the numbers with students who are going to be paying less than the foreign students who were there in previous years.
Yes, I mean, we are driving away international students with policy changes in the UK. We should never forget that international students have a rich set of choices about which countries they study in. They don't have to study in the UK. They've got great options that go beyond the traditional big four of the US, UK, Australia, and Canada. There are now a Big 10 or a Big 14 countries who are offering great higher education to internationally mobile students. And indeed, many countries are expanding the range of options, high quality options that they offer students who would previously have gone abroad and might now not. So the UK shouldn't imagine that it's a sort of a default choice for international students. That simply isn't the case. It's a very competitive sector to be operating in. And we are driving away international students in a range of ways, particularly now the plans from the Labour government to introduce a levy, effectively a tax, on every international student who comes to the UK. Your previous correspondent, Professor David Maguire of the University of East Anglia, made reference to the Home Office's new rules, which again are proving very difficult for universities to handle. So it's becoming more and more difficult for the UK to stay competitive in what is an intensely competitive part of the sector.
Let me ask you about another aspect of all of this, which is tuition fees. You mentioned that at the start of our conversation. There is renewed pressure on the new government to look again at this whole question of tuition fees. Lucy Powell, the new Education Secretary, has described the system as egregious and said that doing something about it is top of her in tray. We know that university students are leaving with these phenomenal amounts, £50,000-60,000 worth of debt, which many of them are never going to be able to pay off. Is it time to look again at all of this? I mean, you seem to be suggesting at the start of the conversation that they weren't high enough. I mean, I'm sure most people who are at university or even thinking of going there are going to be saying, look, they're already too high and the repayment system is unfair.
Well, let's remember a couple of things. Fees today are in real terms about 30% cheaper than they were in 2012 when this level of tuition fee was introduced by the coalition government because of the effects of a decade of inflation. Second point I would make is the total borrowings that students have when they graduate are not composed just of tuition fees. They're made up partly of tuition fees, but also from the maintenance loans that students take out to support themselves while they're studying. So it's not just the tuition fees that are making up the student borrowings.
No, but the loans have these extraordinary compound rates of interest, don't they? They have been capped in some cases, but it does still mean that the overall cost of going to university for some students is tens of thousands of pounds of debt.
Yeah, that's a cost that's going to be borne somehow, Carole. The question is who bears that cost? And the cost is currently split between the student who takes on that liability to repay when their earnings are above a threshold, and the government that underwrites the whole student loan book and only enforces repayment when students are earning a graduate salary of more than £25,000. The government subsidises higher education massively in this country. What people who want to get rid of tuition fees and make them all grant funded are effectively saying is that they want the whole bang shoot to be paid for by the taxpayer. And I don't think actually taxpayers, when they reflect upon that, will think that's fair, given that graduates go on to earn more than non-graduates on average, and have done and will continue and will doubtless continue to do so.
We're going to have to leave it there, but it's been great to speak to you. Lord Johnson, Joe Johnson, former Universities Minister, thanks so much for joining us.